The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to PCI's webinar series. This presentation, Leveraging the I in BIM to Streamline Precast Production, Inventory Control, and Shipping, is sponsored by ALLPLAN. My name is Royce Covington, Manager of Member Services at PCI, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Before I turn the controls over to your presenters today, I have a few introductory items to note. Earlier today, we sent an email to all registered attendees with a handout of today's presentation. That handout has been updated and is also available now and can be found in the Handouts pane located near the bottom of the GoToWebinar toolbox. If you do not have the course handout, please email PCI Marketing at marketing@pci as shown on your screen. All attendee lines are muted. The GoToWebinar toolbox has an area for you to raise your hand. If you raise your hand, you will receive a private chat message from me. If you have a question, type it into the questions pane, where I will be keeping track of them to read during the Q&A period. Today's presentation will be recorded and uploaded to PCI's LMS site within the next week. PCI is a registered provider of AIA CES, but this presentation does not contain content that is endorsed by AIA. Any questions about the content of this webinar should be directed to PCI. The program content does not constitute approval by PCI, nor does it necessarily reflect the views or positions of PCI or those of their respective officers, directors, members, or employees. Questions related to specific products or publications will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Next week, you will be receiving an attendee credit from ALLPLAN. Our presenters for today are David Lockery, Business Development Manager at ALLPLAN. Joining him are Brandon Botts, Senior Technical Consultant at ALLPLAN, and Dan Istvan, Vice President of Technical and Operations of the Americas at ALLPLAN. I'll now turn the controls over so that we can begin our presentation.
Royce, thank you very much. As Royce mentioned, my name is David Lockery. I am our Business Development Manager for Infrastructure and Precast Markets here in the Americas. And we are presenting today a BIM-driven precast workflow for the operations that lie downstream of your engineering and detailing processes. As we know, over the last 5, perhaps as long as 8 years, BIM has really started to change the way that we develop, engineer, model, and detail precast components for precast buildings. But what it has not yet done is really start to affect the things that occur downstream from that, whether it is production management, scheduling, erection, delivery, logistics, integration in with the back office operations, finance through ERPs. So what we see today is a very disjointed workflow. There's relatively little integration, a lot of manual handoff of information. Statusing is done manually, production planning is done manually. Excel is the tool that kind of dominates this workflow. And that's fine insofar as it goes, but it leads to a lot of unnecessary confusion, risk, and ultimately lack of optimization and using capacity that you have. So we are doing all of this engineering, the modeling, the detailing, shop tickets, all in BIM. We have this information-rich database of what this building consists of and what needs to be done to produce it. How do we use that downstream? Well, our answer to that is TIM. We consume in TIM the information that was created as a part of your engineering, detailing, modeling, shop ticket production process, and use it as a single data source to drive everything that occurs after that, from drawing acceptance and quality assurance for engineering work through to erection sequencing, production planning and optimization, and then the actual casting, pre and post casting quality control, as well as then managing the yard, locating objects, managing stock, and feeding into shipping and logistics. We also have a mobile platform, which in addition to working in the yard, also works on site for site operations, erection, and construction. So this kind of covers several areas. One is the actual work that takes place in your yard, as mentioned. The other is integrating data. The data from these BIM models can be used to drive ERP systems, financials, purchasing. It can also be used to drive MES or rebar bending to go directly to fabrication. We are very wide ranging in the applications that we plug into, and we're very capable of creating custom custom APIs and plugins to interact with things that you may have developed that are proprietary to your own company. In sum total, this leads to a significant increase in productivity. It allows you to eliminate slack in your physical capital rather than investing in more very expensive physical plant. It allows you to optimize your use of workforce and optimize shift scheduling. It also reduces error and risk throughout the entire process, rather than using paper, PDF, and email processes to deal with everything from the acceptance of shop tickets through to the quality assurance process. We are digitizing that. We are providing a trail of everything that has happened on this project, all the engineering work that has been done, and then the actual physical production process as well. We are making it significantly easier to understand how your current workers are being employed, how your physical plant is being utilized, and to what extent. We're wringing a lot of the potential risk and a lot of the slack out of the existing process using digitization. Rather than talk about it more, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Istvan, who is going to start actually showing the platform and how it works. Royce, if you could get us switched over to Dan's screen.
Thank you, David. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So just continuing from what David said, today's presentation is really going to be focused on taking advantage of the eye that we get from the BIM model. So what we're starting out with today, and kind of continuing from the webinar that we delivered, I think back in July, is really understanding and answering a couple of questions that came off the back of the webinar from some prospects and customers of ours, centering around QA, QC, around production, and also around how do I manage my inventory? How do I know where those elements are in my yard? So those are some of the problems that we'll be solving today with the presentation I'm about to give you. So we're going to start with the project already imported. If you want to see, how we got to this point, you can, obviously go back and watch the previous webinar, or reach out to us and we can do a customized demo. But basically, we brought in the data from a BIM model, which can be created or authored by either Revit, Tekla, PlanBar, and any type of tool that has an IFC export. And we're going to basically extract all the data, including the model. So we can see here we have the ability to view the model, the 3D model that was created. This is our little office building that Brandon created for us. And also the big part of the eye is going to be the information of that model, which we'll see down below here, which is the attribute data, such as, what type of element is it? What is the erection number, the length, width? What type of reinforcement is it getting? What type of layering system does it have? And what's contained with it? All this information is quickly and easily selected, and you can basically, as an end user, display as much or as little of that information as you want. You can export that to Excel as well. But ultimately, what this information is going to give you is two things. First is it's a single source of truth. So once we import it into our database, that means all of the other operations within your system can access it, either be production or production scheduling, or inventory management, or whatever it might be. They all are working from the same data that's managed in one system. The other big thing that we're bringing in, so that's the big eye, but it's also the things that we always want, which is, let's say, the shop drawings or the erection drawings. So here I'm going to go in and all that information is going to be in one place. I'm going to open up here an erection drawing. Oh, sorry, I think I opened up the wrong one. So here, if we want to look at the first and second floor erection drawing, so it's going to open up that data. Again, single source of truth, single depository. Everyone is going to be able to access this from one location, which makes it very easy. So we can see things such as erection drawings, or if I select on an element itself. So right now we're looking at that beam right there. I can just go in and look at that beam itself. So again, just a lot of information that is at your fingertips to help you manage whatever your job is day in, day out in a precast factory. We're going to give you that data easily to access it and easily organized for you.
And this visibility is at the heart of everything that follows on here. This information is at our fingertips as we're scheduling production. We know every single instance of a certain type of element. We can sort by embed, we can sort by concrete type, whether or not the element has a veneer. So we can use all of this information to drive the remainder of the process. It's not just having it at your fingertips, it's actually employing it.
Absolutely, David, good point. So next, what we're going to really concentrate is we have all this data, everything right now, we can kind of see here, I've grouped it by new. So I have 110 elements here in this project that are new. We're just going to go in and really quickly talk about the workflow. This is very customizable. Every precaster is going to have their own little milestones. But what we're going to go through is do some QA/QC, starting from the formwork, some inspections, some visual inspections, and if it ultimately passes or fails, we're going to stack it and then place it in inventory. So as we move through the project, and we'll notice when we go to Brandon with the mobile app, that's how we're going to basically first kind of understand, where the information is, report on it, and get a clear understanding. Answering some basic questions. Did these elements get the formwork approved? Did they pass the pre-pour inspection, or did it fail it? All that information is being stored for you, so that way you have a hierarchy of it, a history of it, but also to report on it, so you have a clear understanding of what's going on. And just to obviously make it all simple, you can really get rid of paper, and everything can be handled electronically for you. Before we get into that, just a couple other things to kind of just remind you from the last webinar. Not only do we have the data here, but let's just say we want some different types of reports. So not only, for instance, if I want to, I can highlight this information, these elements here, I can quickly export them to Excel. Just a click of a button, I have those in Excel and customize them in Excel myself. I can create QR labels, for instance. So basically it's going to go in and create QR labels, and we can go and scan them and quickly find out information from any Android device. So there's other things that go in there. I can go in and also find out, what fixtures do these elements that I've selected have. So I can get myself a quick list of the fixtures, how many pieces they are. Instant information without having to do any digging or any, open up the drawings. Everything is available for you at a button click. I can also filter it through here. So for instance, if I want to just say, look at my first floor beams here. So just the first floor beams, I'm going to select them here. And let's just say I want to see the rebar cutting list. So this is a real nice report. You're going to get everything included. You're going to obviously get an image as well for it. So instant access to your data. We can see our shapes and all the information. All these reports are completely customizable. It's up to you. But again, everything's at your fingertips. To kind of help you manage as you go through the basically life of a project as you're going through it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to just really jump in and start with what we talked about earlier, which is our QA/QC. Those are the first milestones that we want to go through our factory here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to switch our module. Right now we're what we call the collaboration module, which kind of gives you an idea of where everything is. This is the hub of our system, and we're going to switch over to what we call our mobile manager. So the mobile manager is where we can go in, and as a project manager, production manager, you're basically creating tasks. These are things that you're probably already doing. Let me remove the filter here. You're probably already doing to begin with, either through shop drawings or through Excel, whatever it might be. So this is just a more streamlined way of doing it and a little bit more organized. And these task lists then will go directly through the shop floor to a Android mobile phone device for the your employees on the shop floor to track the tasks that you've given them, either the formwork, whatever it might be. So I'm not going to get too detailed into it, but the whole point here is that this is a very customizable workflow. We basically work with you, our service team will work with you to basically build it to exactly to how you do your work or how you envision doing your work or tracking information in there. So the big things I just want to highlight real quick is what we call templates. So these templates are going to really be the way that we set up basically every location in your yard. Maybe it's your QA/QC for the pre-pour, post-pour, or for your inventory. So for instance, I've got just one that I've created here for my production for my QA/QC, and I'm just telling it I need tablet to track these statuses, my formwork, pour break, and then I can set up here if it's going to be a time, if it's going to record the GPS location of where it was doing, so it actually can record the GPS of the tablet. So a lot of options, a lot of settings. I can also, as we go into Brandon, we can see we can have either drop-down list, a checkbox, or all that stuff is customizable. We can set up different teams and employees of where we're going. And so the reason you're doing all this is obviously just to manage it, but also for traceability. So we know exactly, who checked that that pre-pour, who checked that post-pour visual. All that stuff is recorded for you and then can be analyzed and looked at later as we go through. So the first thing we're going to go through is I'm going to go in and just select some items from within my list of items that I have available in my new. So a nice little thing that I can do is I can filter or set up preset filters. So for instance, I just want to see solid walls. And what we'll notice when I do that is it creates a filter for me for any solid wall that's less than 42 foot, greater than a 7 foot length, width less than 42, and then the piece marks are between 4 and 14. So the reason I want to show you this is you can create these filters on all the data that you have here, save them. So if it's something that you do day in, day out, you don't have to create this every time, and it automatically then takes you to the information you want to look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 12 items, switch over to my create tasks, select my team, the date, and then create the tasks to send over to my mobile application.
All right, so just to explain to everyone, from the base station, from the actual server, once we've assigned tasks and assigned shop drawings to be pushed out to given tablets belonging to given workers, then we can go over to the mobile app. And that's where Brandon comes in. He's now in this mobile app. He punches the refresh button as he heads out onto the yard in the morning while he's still within a Wi-Fi environment, and he gets a full data dump of everything that he's expected to do for the day and all the information he needs to do it.
Absolutely, thank you. Yep. So Dan just sent over a task list to my tablet. So I'm just going to refresh that data just to see exactly what he has assigned to me, and it lets me know. That exclamation point tells me that a new task has been assigned to me, that I need to refresh, and then we're all good to go. So from here, this is just the main screen. This is completely customizable. This is just what was assigned to my screen itself from Tim, from the Tim manager. So here in this main screen, I can do a couple of different things. I can see my data from my past tasks. I can just go into this screen and I can go to the different dates of the different tasks that I had in the past just to go back and look at them. But I can also set my arrival time and my departure time. If you want to keep track of what time you either arrived on the job or arrived at different places, you can set that arrival time and the departure time just by clicking on that button, and it's going to set that time for us. But the next option here is going into the assigned task list that Dan just assigned to me. So by simply selecting on that project itself, you can bring up the different elements in which you have. Dan, are these the elements that you assigned to me?
Yep.
All right, good. So we have elements 10 through 13. And within these elements themselves, you have different options to go over as well. So once you go into those elements, you have different statuses that you can assign to it. So say your quality control manager or the technician is in the plan itself and looking at the beds. He can determine whether the formwork is going to be passed or not. Once you look at the shop drawing, which is tied to MTIM as well, you can just pull up the shop drawing in MTIM. You can look at the dimensions. You can make sure everything is good to go. And if it is good, you can simply check the checkbox for that formwork to be good to go. And this just sends, once you select that checkbox and you're connected to Wi-Fi, it sends that status back to the plant, back to the TIM manager, and it changes that status in TIM manager itself. That way we can see that it has been approved, that formwork is approved. And if you're not connected to Wi-Fi at that moment, it's okay. You can still select that that formwork has been approved. And then once you get back connected to Wi-Fi, it'll then send that information back to TIM manager. All right, so we're going to go through the list here, and we're going to just say that pre-pour inspection has passed as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to check that also. But it doesn't have to be just a checkbox, right? So we can also do different things. We're going to say this pour break. We're going to go into the pour break itself. We're going to say 2 pours. 2 pours looks good. So that's good. We're going to save that. And then we're going to go to a strand pool. That strand pool, we're going to say that that's a pass or fail. We're going to go with a pass. And then the visual inspection as well. I mean, these are just statuses that Dan has sent to me, but you can change these. These are all customizable. All right, we're going to select OK for that. And then for the production, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass this for production itself. All right, so that's for element 13. And now we're going to go into element 14. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to say that this pre-pour inspection has failed because something is wrong with it. Either either the formwork was off, or something was causing this to fail. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to check this. That inspection is going to fail, and that's going to automatically update that status as well. All right, and then we can go through the same pour breaks, whether the production is going to fail or pass. Since the pre-pour inspection failed, we didn't pour that particular piece itself. But we'll go back. We'll go to our element 10, and we're going to actually say that this formwork has passed, the pre-pour inspection has passed, and then we're going to go to the production. Actually, after it was produced, something happened in the pour. Either the concrete, something happened to the concrete, the mix was incorrect or not. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to fail this one. So now we have a complete fail after it was already produced. And that will change these statuses, and they will update back to TIM Manager for you as you go. All right, so that was elements 10, 13, and 14. And then we will send that back to Dan, and then he can show us from there on out.
So Royce, if we could get the screen sent back over to Dan now, please.
Thank you. Let me know if you can hear me and see me.
Looks like we're good this time.
Okay, not sure what happened with the microphone, but we're back. So the stuff that was done by Brandon, we can see now within our model view here. So we have different ways to analyze the data that he just completed for us. But the simplest way is if I make this a little bit bigger, we'll notice here I've grouped my, actually I'm gonna take the element top. I've grouped my my elements by the status. So we'll notice that some of those elements, specifically the ones that I want is the ones in red. So you can set up different color coordination. It's a customizable thing, but I can tell right off the back that element 14 has failed inspection, and then element 10 or piece mark 10 has failed the production. So this is just a very simple visual. Obviously, I can also see it within my model in here. So if I want to even just look at the walls, actually. We can see right within the modeling view here, we have a color coordinated view of it. So we know in red, we have an issue with these elements. And there's other things we can create, different reports, different views. On an upcoming webinar, we'll start talking a little bit about some reports and some of the business intelligence type of tools such as Power BI that we're planning for next year to really show, obviously I can see it right here, I can create an Excel, but we can also set up some high level reports that are automatically updating, so I can have a clean view of anything that's passing and failing. So we'll get into that a little bit more in a future webinar as we move forward. But the big point of it is just the managing information back and forth between multiple mobile devices into the system. And again, now I have a single source of truth. It's all coming back to the database here, and I can tell exactly where those elements are and what's going on with them, and I can start working with them as we go forward. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is, so that's just a simple example of just some customizable QA/QC processes that we can do anywhere throughout the system. Next, what we'll do is let's talk a little bit about going in and organizing these either for the, either for in our inventory, or if you have a type of a just-in-time type of system, onto trailer, so that way they're ready to be shipped. So this is what we call our delivery manager. It doesn't have to be just for delivery. It's just a way to basically organize our elements as we finish production. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly switch over. We'll do walls in a second. Let's just do a couple of hollow cores. So we're going to do two different types of stacking here. So the first one is a flat stacking. So I created one ahead of time. We'll create another one. But let's just explain real quick what we're doing here, what we have in front of us. So within our settings, we have our factory settings, which are basically implemented as we set up your system. We basically try to replicate the different areas in your plant that you have, the different things that you want to put in there. So we can set up things such as an A-frame, so an A-frame type of stacking where, basically left and right type of area. It's really customizable. We're going to have multiple areas that we put it in there. Then we can set up as we're organizing these, are we organizing them upright, or are we doing them flat? All customizable. Set up some constraints. The length, width, and height of the area that we're putting it in can be set up. Same thing here. If I go for my slabs under 30 foot long, so all my slabs under 30 foot long, we can set up, the constraints for it. And for these, we're going to go in and organize them flat. We can also set up, if we go back up here, sorry, we could set up a maximum weight of how much weight we can do. So there's a lot of things you can customize to kind of help you kind of replicate what you're doing today. The big factor in this, and a lot of precasters that we've spoken to over the years, this is usually done in either an Excel spreadsheet or a little bit of a Access database that they've created. The big thing that we're adding to this is, it's a value add. Again, single source of truth. You're taking information, you're not recreating it, but the visualization part of it. So let's go in here, and I'm going to go in and create another container. So I'm going to basically just click on this, create a container. It's going to be called Stack 2. We can rename it, but this is just Stack 2. We'll notice here we have the visual. We have a front view of the stack, and these are the constraints that we set up: the length, width, height. We have a elevation view and a 3D view as well, and a floor plan. And I can go in now and start adding my elements to it. So basically, I've got my list of elements down below here. I can go in here and I could just say, you know what, let me just see my hollow cores. And so I've got a filter set up for my hollow cores, and I can start adding these elements on there. So we'll notice how it's added the element. If we zoom in a little bit, it's added the element. I can see the element right there, and I can start, placing them on top of each other. So I've done this on purpose. I've got a smaller one on top, and I'll come back to it in a second, so I can place the other one. The nice thing about it is this is completely, this user interface. I can just click on this and just drag and drop it, move it on the side, or just put it on top, put it right above it. It will snap as well. I can move this down, so you have a complete control. I can move it to the right. It's really up to you. Right now, I've set the default to this to go to the center of this stack. I'll put this one right on top.
One thing to keep in mind as we look at all of this is that there is immense customization available for all of these things. We can customize the actual layouts you use, not just for shipping, but also customizing the report formats, customizing the QA/QC documents, especially with regards to QA/QC. What typically happens is that we take a look at the existing paper process and do our best to translate it into something that's minimally disruptive, but digitized.
And I just rotated one just to kind of give us an idea. This might not be the actual way that you do it, but this is just, you can rotate them. You can basically kind of manage them however you want to. And so it's a very simple way of really organizing your elements as you're going through them. The other nice thing that we can do,
I think we would actually play Tetris with them, Dan.
Exactly. So the one thing that we can then do is create a nice little stack list. We've created just a quick, and then another example of a report. This is called the stack list report. Once I've created this, again, this is a nice little way of either, if I pre-plan the stack or, the organization of it, I can then print this out, send it over to the yard so they have a clear understanding and a visual of how it's going to get stacked. This picture, they say it says 1,000 words. This is definitely an example of that. I've got my list and my picture that we can create it. This also shows you the power of the reporting within our system. Not only just data, but the visual aspect, which in my opinion is a very big factor for the shop employees as we go through there. So I just did want to show you quickly how we do the stacking. Also, for instance, if we want to stack walls, so I'm going to switch over to just the walls, and we're going to go in and create an A-frame. And then down below here, I'm going to switch over to just my solid walls and my filter. So similarly, I can go in and I'm selecting from my filter what I want to put on there. This is nice because it's now going to show me a little warning or error message letting me know that, hey, this element that you want to put on this A-frame that you've set up is 10,000 pounds bigger than, you know, the constraints you gave it. It's fine. I can still stack it, or I can go back and change, you know, create a new one. So I'm just going to go ahead and still stack it. You know, and we'll notice it's put that that frame in there for me. So the next thing I want to do is I want to say, all right, where's my second one to go? It's going to go to the rear. I'm going to say, put this one to the right of the one I've just put, and then stack the second one. It's going to tell me again I'm way overweight. Just go in and put it in there. We'll notice it's now put them side by side, one after another. So again, I'm going to go to the right again, add one more, just kind of give us an idea of it, and we'll notice the elements as they go in there. Similarly as before, I can click on them, move them if I want to put this in, you know, to the side here, put this one in the middle, something like that. You can. It's just really up to you how you do it. And I always like to show this because I think this is a great report. Now, obviously, we can see this how we've actually stacked it as well. You know, for these elements. Again, customizable. In some cases, you might just have one laying up like this, and you can, you know, it's up to you. I'm just showing you the example of putting 3 of them in there, and you can put them directly on a trailer. Really customizable. Just kind of give you an idea of how, you know, easy it is to start managing this stuff for you, and kind of creating the reports to understand how we're going to, you know, basically manage these on a shop floor, within a yard or within delivery. So now that I've created these stacks, or I could have done it before, I can also now manage using the mobile device of where I'm going to put them, so within my inventory. So I'm going to switch over to the mobile device again. This time I'm going to go into my team here, and I'm going to say my team is going to be using my stockyard template. And then I'm going to go in here and just kind of highlight the 5, you know, we have element 4, 9, 10, and 11 that we've just stacked. We see the status of them is stacked. So as soon as I put them on a stack, we'll automatically change that status. That actually brings a quick point to make. You've kind of seen us do some of this stuff manually, obviously, with the app, but you can automate some of the statusing either through the barcoding or through other elements. You know, as soon as I finish an action such as stacking it, automatically give it a status of stacked. You know, that's automatically done for you in the background. You don't have to then afterwards move it over to stack. So, you know, there's a lot of automation in the background today. We're kind of showing you everything click by click, but there's a lot that can be automated. And as soon as it's stacked, we can also set up an automatic automation that sends it to the ERP system to let you know, to let the ERP know, hey, that these elements have been stacked and shipped, so they're ready for invoice. If, you know, if the milestones after stacking them or shipping them is to create an invoice from the ERP. So similar as I did before, I selected them. I'm going to create my, click my Precast team and create a stack of these elements. And now we can switch over to Brandon again.
And while we're doing that, I want to kind of hammer home the point that Dan made, that a lot of this, we're showing how it can be done by user control. A lot of this can be automated. We can set up event chains where once you process a single thing, all the associated kind of actions that should follow along with it do follow automatically. When I push a task list to someone, all the associated shop drawings go for the ride, so that Brandon has those at his fingertips. Royce, could we switch over to Brandon's screen while we're here? But then if I update a status, then all the necessary tasks drop into the queue. Following that, I can assign inspections, both pre and post pour. I can assign then, for instance, an erection queue as well.
So you can see here I have a new task. My exclamation point up here at the menu is showing. So I have to come up here and refresh. And then you can see here's a stockyard. So this is where we're gonna manage the locations of the stockyard. So we can go ahead and click on the stockyard task that we've created. So we can come in here to the stack 1 and stack 2. We'll go ahead and we'll go into stack 1. And you can visually see the elements that are in stack 1. They're highlighted in the model itself. And then once we get into that information, we can come in here and we can specify where the stack is going to go in your yard. So these are just the designations that we've provided, the A1 through A5, and then B1 through B3. These are just the locations that we've entered into here, but you can have any location entered into any of those parameters entered in here as well. So we're going to say that stack 1 is going to be in that location A01. So once we place that status gets sent back to the TIM manager. And you can see the color of the status has changed as well, because now we place them in an inventory, and that is the status that gets sent back also. So we can go into stack 2, and that's going to be the same thing. It highlights that particular piece. And again, I didn't go over this before as well, but once you highlight that particular piece itself, you can also you can manually take it out, and you can see all those elements individually as well. All right, but then you can go into that particular stack 2, and then you can place that in that location. So we're going to place this stack 2 in A02. All right, so now that is in inventory as well, so that status changed again. All right.
And one cool thing that's happening in the background here is that as we're doing this, we are aware of the possibility of user error. So the platform is actually geotagging every action that someone who's using a tablet in the mobile platform takes. I can see GPS coordinates associated with where that worker was standing when they punch the A02 button. And if they are off by 1, or if they've put it in the wrong row, for instance, I'm going to have a pretty good idea of where that element actually is if I go back to A02 and I find that it's not there.
One
this
other
also
thing
works. Dan, sorry.
Now I was going to say the other is, Brandon, if you go back into, I think, stack 1, where we started with, just to show the shop drawing. We haven't showed that feature yet. If we scroll down.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't see that. All right, so we'll go ahead and we can actually, so SW9, that's going to zoom into this particular piece itself. And you can see the shop drawing as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select that shop drawing for that piece. And once we do that, we can choose which application we want to open it with. And then it's going to automatically bring up that shop drawing for the piece. And you can also, so back when in the production data as well, for the stockyard locations, we can visually see the piece itself, the shop drawing, which is great. But also for the production side as well, for the formwork and everything, you can visually see the shop drawing. And if something is wrong with the formwork or an insert is placed incorrectly, you can go ahead and you can just go ahead and mark this up in the mobile application. You can go ahead and say, this needs to be 2 foot 2 inches instead of what it is. You can circle that, and then you can save it. You can save it into the local directory, wherever the guys in your plant need to see it.
And when you get back into the office, that drawing is going to get pushed back with the markup back to Tim's server. So the engineers, this was really more of the quality assurance part, and we skipped over it at the time. But once I've made that markup and I've said something failed in post-pour, the engineers back in the back office are going to see A, that it failed, they can sort by this, and B, that they are, I apologize. B, that where the failure is, the markup's going to.
Absolutely, David. Yeah. So the big benefit is we have the complete traceability of the status that we sent, and any of the markups of the drawings will be uploaded to a separate folder that we've set up. So that way we have a history of the markups of the drawings as well, separate from the ones that are imported into TIM.
All right. Also,
so
I think go ahead.
I think now we can switch over back to my screen, and we'll finish it up, and then we'll go to David for the closing remarks.
Absolutely.
So let me know if you can hear me and see me again, just making sure.
You're all good
Yes,
so far.
Okay, perfect. Really, the big thing here is just to highlight again. We will notice that automatically within my system here and within the view, so we have the nice little color by attribute here. We can see that those elements 4 and 9 went to inventory location A01, and 10 and 11 went to inventory location A02. So we have the full traceability, and same thing here. We can do different reports. But within my status here, you know, another way of just looking at data the same way is if I want to see all the elements in A01, obviously I can see it right within here where I can filter from within my system. So all that information was fed back. You know, we know exactly where everything is at any point. And then, you know, if we need to send someone out into the yard, hey, go grab, you know, for project number 15, 10, 11, and 12, whatever it might be, I can quickly find out where they are in my inventory from here because we've tracked that information, and then we can send them out to get the data, to get the elements. So that basically comes to a conclusion of the technical aspects of this presentation. We'll switch back to David to do some closing remarks, and then we'll sit for some Q&A.
Let me get my screen up. All right. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Brandon. So just in closing, obviously the name TIM, the name Plan Bar are relatively new names here in the United States. But we are a subsidiary corporation of the second largest AEC software company in the globe. We are in wide use globally for detailing and engineering applications as well as production applications. We have become one of the premier choices for precasters and for concrete contractors worldwide to deal with detailing, to deal with production management, to deal with site operations. So while we're new to the US, we are very well established globally and have great technical resources to offer. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and we'll field any questions that anyone has. So with that, I think I'll turn this over to Royce. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David, Brandon, and Dan. We do have some questions already. Does TIM work for any type of product?
Yes, it works. You know, there's no limitations at all. Any type of structural product or any type of high-end architectural product, it will work with all of them. There's no limitation.
I'm sorry, continue. All right, thank you.
You're good.
The next question is, can TIM integrate with Microsoft Project?
Yes, absolutely. We can integrate with Microsoft Project. We didn't really get into the details. I think on the last webinar, we talked a little bit about creating sequencing and assigning dates for either production sequencing or shipping sequencing or erection sequencing, and all that information can then be exported to Microsoft Project for managing in there as well.
All right, thank you. This next one's a two-part question. What type of tablets does TIM work with, and do the tablets need to be continuously connected to Wi-Fi?
I can answer that one, Dan. Sorry, David. So yeah, TIM's mobile app really can work on any Android device. You know, we typically recommend Samsung, but it doesn't really matter. It can really work on any Android device. As far as does it have to be continuously connected to Wi-Fi, the answer is no, not at all. So if it is connected to Wi-Fi, as soon as you change those statuses in mobile TIM, it'll immediately send it back to TIM Manager. But if you're not connected to Wi-Fi at the moment, when you do change those statuses in the mobile TIM, it'll just wait, and as soon as you do connect to Wi-Fi or any type of service, it'll send those updates back to TIM Manager.
All right, thank you. That leads into actually related to the next question. It says, can TIM send information to mesh welding machines?
So Dan, so you're asking if if TIM can send information to the mesh welding machines. Was that the question? Sorry.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Dan, I'm not sure.
It's a good question. Actually, we do have a lot of customers that use mesh mesh types of products with their precast elements and TIM. And TIM can handle all of the mesh. We can import them and manage the mesh within the system, and we can export to different types of. Really, TIM has is a very open system, so we can export to multiple types of manufacturers, such as progress machinery. So the answer is yes. It really depends on which type of machine are we talking about. Really, is probably going to be the limitations.
Yeah, and I would add to Dan's comment, one of the things that's going to answer that question is exactly what kind of engineering and detailing went into it prior. TIM itself is agnostic as to the source of information. It can work with our detailing plan bar platform. It can work with Tekla or Revit. So if the information was properly detailed for fabrication in that detailing platform, then yes. But we would need to know a little bit more to firmly answer that question for any given circumstance.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next question is, we use SAP for our ERP system. Can TIM integrate with SAP?
Yes, it can integrate really with any type of ERP or accounting system that's out on the market. We have many customers using SAP or RIB. It's really there's no limitation in that sense.
Okay. All right. We got one last question here. How can I get my Revit model into TIM for production planning?
So Dan, do you want to field this one or shall I?
Sure, I can. So basically, from Revit, we have 3 ways actually to get it in from Revit. One is IFC. So the more common one our customers use is an IFC export out of Revit that we import. Another one that we've just a new functionality we've released is actually being able to import RVT files. So actually, you don't even have to export IFC. We can actually take just the RVT file as well. So just a little cleaner, quicker way of importing the data in. Or a third way that some of our customers use is using what's called Unicam files. So Unicam is a standard file format that's kind of used throughout the world, especially for different machinery. So Unicam export out of Revit will bring in all the geometrical information that can be used in TIM as well.
Okay, looks like we have another question that just came in. It says, can a production report be generated for any period of time during the production process?
Yeah, because basically everything in TIM, every action, everything that we do in TIM has a date stamp to it. So we have it's got the complete history of everything that's happened to an element, or by who did it, when they did it, and everything. So yes, it can be. You can create historical reports to have a clear understanding of what happened when.
All right, well, it looks like that's all the questions that we have right now. So on behalf of PCI, I'd like to thank our presenters for the great presentation and all attendees for your participation. As a reminder, a recording of today's webinar will be uploaded to PCI's LMS site within the next week. You'll also be receiving an attendee credit from ALLPLAN themselves directly. If you have any further questions about today's webinar, please email marketing@pci.org with the title Online BIM Webinar. Thank you again and have a great day.